Persona on Nintendo Switch, the thing that people were relentlessly bullied over until it happened. This is the franchise that everyone thought would never leave PlayStation, but now that it's here, it feels like it's always been on Nintendo platforms. Atlus has put out a few Persona titles on 3DS before, but never a mainline title. A lot of these Persona ports are pretty interesting, so let's take a look. While this video is titled Persona on Switch, I would be remiss not to mention Catherine Fullbody. It was Atlus's first Nintendo Switch port, and for their first attempt, they did a good job, I would say. No, you don't count. The Switch port runs at 720p, while PlayStation 4 is a full 1080p. But other than that, this port is essentially flawless. This is a good first step, but what about an actual Persona game? As in February 2021, we were graced with Persona 5 Strikers. This spin-off uses the Dynasty Warriors gameplay formula mixed with Persona abilities from the main games, while serving as a direct sequel to the original Persona 5. If you want to catch my old review of it, I'll put a title card up now. But as for the Switch version, it's fine. Resolution took a nosedive compared to PS4, and the frame rate was cut in half. It's not unplayable or anything, but it's not the best experience by any means. This is actually the version I initially played and beat, so that just goes to show that it's pretty tolerable. But the Switch version unfortunately suffers from major frame drops in portable mode. I have some clips where it looks like it's in the single digits. Docked mode is much more consistent, likely due to the higher clock speeds. At least it's not as bad as Age of Calamity, because that game drops like it's no one's business. After Strikers, we didn't see another Persona game on Switch until the release of Persona 4 Arena Ultimax in early 2022. Since it's a sprite-based game, there's not a lot to talk about here. It runs perfectly in both docked and portable modes, although it is missing the rollback-based netcode that the PS4 and Steam versions have. Other than that, though, it's perfect. Okay, so I will say there is one thing I kind of forgot to mention about the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax port for Switch. You have to play with Joy-Cons. Who in their right mind wants to do that? Like, at least to me, they're responsive enough, but at the same time, this is not conducive to a fighting game, like, at all. So just keep that in mind if you're wanting to play this game on the Switch. Me personally, if the game worked on Steam Deck, that's what I would be doing. But 2022 proved to be a monumental year for Persona on Nintendo systems. During a summer Nintendo Direct, we got the biggest announcement ever.
Mission start!
Not only did we get Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden ports, we also got Persona 5 Royal announced to be coming to everything. The ports were already announced to be coming to Xbox, but we didn't know about Switch and PS5 until a few weeks later. Hashtag Break Free Persona had started a couple of years prior, and Persona 5 on Nintendo Switch was all literally anybody wanted for the longest time. Unfortunately, BFP became a cesspool of toxicity, but that didn't matter to anyone because we finally won. On to the ports themselves, let's talk about Persona 5 Royal. The game was largely uncompromised compared to PlayStation 4, minus texture quality and shadow resolution. Audio quality for voice lines is also compressed compared to PS4, but honestly I think it sounds better, as the vocals are super harsh sounding on other platforms.
In any case, you'll have to explain yourself. Follow me. Still, you're coming with me. It's undeniable that you're extremely late.
But other than that, the port is essentially perfect. It runs above 720p in docked mode and around 540p in portable with a 30 FPS cap that rarely falters, although you can definitely push it under 30 depending on what you're doing. The only issue I have with the port is that the frame rate could have been 60 if Nintendo would allow for higher clock speeds. With an overclock, P5R can easily run at 60 FPS. This just goes to show how powerful the Switch could be if Nintendo let the Tegra X1 stretch its legs. But all in all, Sega did an amazing job porting this game to all platforms, especially Nintendo Switch. So Persona 5 Royal was a great port, but what about these two? In January of 2023, Persona 4 Golden dropped, and the performance is self-explanatory. The port runs at 1080p, 60 FPS perfectly, with no noticeable frame drops anywhere in the game. And Persona 3 Portable dropped the same day, and it's much the same, locked 1080p at 60 FPS. Unfortunately, the portable port is absolute garbage, but that has nothing to do with the Switch. To wrap this up, the last game for today is Persona 5 Tactica. Unfortunately, Persona 3 Reload didn't come to Switch, so this is the best we got right now. And as expected, performance is right where it should be. In the 3D environments, the game runs at a constant 30 FPS. Granted, I'm not that far in the Switch version, so it could drop later on, but I doubt it would change much, if any. The weird thing about this version of the game is that everything runs at 30 FPS. Even things that probably don't need to be that way. The 2D cutscenes with nothing but static backgrounds and 2D portraits did not need to run at 30 FPS at all. If I had to guess, it's likely a holdover from the last generation PS4 and Xbox One versions, as those are also 30 FPS. And in all honesty, I think the game absolutely could run at 60. Looking at Sega's other Unity games shipped on Nintendo Switch, both Banana Mania and Sonic Superstars run at a 60 FPS lock with minimal frame drops. So what's this game's excuse? And before some smartass in the comments says this, I'm well aware Nocturne HD is 30 FPS. That has nothing to do with the system and everything with Nocturne itself. With a mod, Persona 5 Tactica runs amazingly at 60 FPS on the Switch, which just goes to show the frame rate cap was pretty arbitrary. But either way, the product shipped to store shelves is still a solid way to experience the game, especially on the go. Looking back at all the Persona products on Switch so far, they're all pretty good. There's not a single port that's truly bad, unlike another Sega franchise I know. The fact that there's no truly awful port just goes to show how Atlus actually cares about how their franchise is represented to this new audience on Nintendo Switch. And not every company behaves this way, so it's great to see the gaming industry still has some semblance of integrity left. But how would a supposed Persona 3 Reload port run on Nintendo Switch? We already have Shin Megami Tensei 5 as a baseline for Atlus's ability to take advantage of Unreal Engine 4, which ended up being ambition over performance. Vengeance is a bit better as it seemingly stays closer to that 30 FPS target. If we use the Steam Deck as a point of comparison, both SMT5 Vengeance and Persona 3 Reload can run above 60 FPS, but Vengeance generally has better performance across the board. Rarely does my frame rate ever dip below 60 on my Steam Deck OLED, but for Persona 3 Reload, the game loves to dip below 60 unless I tank the settings to their lowest. It seems to me that P Studio's understanding of Unreal Engine 4 isn't nearly as complete as the Vengeance team. Now granted, Vengeance is based on a Switch title, which most certainly gives them a leg up over Reload, but still, I think Vengeance across the board is a better looking title, which is kind of an issue for Reload considering it was never even meant for Switch. I think Persona 3 Reload absolutely could run on Nintendo Switch if P Studio or whatever porting team put in the legwork to make it happen. Lots of graphical cuts would need to be made to make it work, but we've seen with games like Crisis Core Remastered that the Switch can absolutely run high-end Unreal Engine 4 ports if given the attention it needs. Or, you know, they could just wait for Switch 2. So how do we feel about the Persona series on Nintendo Switch? What other Persona games would you like to see come to the platform? And do you think Persona 6 will come to Switch too? Let me know in the comments below. I want to thank my channel supporters Azu Crystal and Common CJ. They support me over on Patreon, and if you'd like to join them, the link is in the description. YouTube memberships are also an option as well. I do want to apologize for the long hiatus. I've been busy with work, and in combination with a major lack of drive to make content, I haven't been attentive enough to the channel. I am looking to change that though, as I have a video about playing Sonic games on the Mac coming out soon. It's super interesting, so I hope you look forward to that when it comes out. But I think that about does it for me. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.